Free-to-play games are supposed to last forever, right? I mean, no price tag, constant updates, live service, and these games are built to stay for years. But as we all know, that's not always how it goes. And over the past couple of years, we have seen some genuinely awesome free-to-play games just disappear. And I'm talking fully shut down, servers gone, and completely unplayable. So in this video, we're gonna take a look at 10 of the coolest free-to-play games that you can never play again or are about to disappear very soon. And if you ever got the chance to try out any of these games, let me know down in the comment section. So let's get into it. Alright, start off with a game that literally became a meme even before its launch, and that is Highguard. This was a free-to-play hero shooter made by ex-developers from Apex Legends and Titanfall, so yeah, the expectation was pretty high. The game itself was trying to mix fantasy and sci-fi with team-based PvP, abilities, destructible environments, even mounted combat, and honestly, the idea wasn't that bad. But everything went downhill during the Game Awards 2025 announcement, where Highguard was revealed as the final biggest game of the show, and yeah, people was not happy. It got tons of backlash online, and from that moment the game's reputation was basically done. Then it launched in early 2026, had a decent start with a solid player count, but just within a week it lost most of its players, and a lot of people said that the game was too complicated, harder to get into, and just didn't stand out in the already crowded free-to-play shooter market. And the crazy part is, Highguard only lasted about 45 days. It launched, flopped, and now the servers are completely shut down. Next up is Supervive, and this one is actually hurts a bit because it genuinely had potential. This was a free-to-play team-based shooter mixed with MOBA style mechanics, kinda like if Overwatch and Battle Royale had a baby. It got unique heroes with abilities, squad-based gameplay, and strong focus on coordination and movement, which made the gameplay feel fast-paced and very competitive. And when it first showed up, a lot of people actually were super excited about it. I played the game at launch and it was pretty fun, but the problem was it never really found its footing. The game struggled to build its constant player base, and even though the core gameplay was solid, it just couldn't compete with the big guys on the market. And also the updates weren't enough to keep the player base coming back, and slowly the hype just faded away, and eventually the developers announced the shutdown in early 2026, and now the Supervive is completely shut down and officially gone, which is very unfortunate. Next up, we got probably one of the biggest and the most disappointing shutdowns on this list, and that is none other than XDefiant. This was Ubisoft's free-to-play arena shooter that was basically marketed as their big coming back into the arcade first-person shooter scene, kinda competing directly with Call of Duty. It had fast-paced gunplay, faction-based abilities pulled from different Ubisoft franchises, and honestly at launch, a lot of players actually enjoyed it, including myself. I personally put close to like 120 hours into this game, even bought the battle pass and few skins, so I'm the one who should be most disappointed about. But keeping that aside, the game was actually pretty fun to play. The movement felt solid, the gunplay was clean, and it looked like Ubisoft finally had a winning free-to-play shooter. But the problem started pretty quickly after the hype died down. The player count was dropping rapidly, the matchmaking issues started popping up, and the seasonal content, the progression, the new events wasn't strong enough to keep the player base engaged in the long term, and eventually they made the decision to shut down the game completely. So yeah, another game launched with a huge expectations and just couldn't survive in the long run. Alright, next up we got MultiVersus, and this one is actually a really interesting case because it had a full-on comeback story. The game was originally launched with a massive hype wave because it was basically Warner Brothers' answer to Smash Bros, bringing together characters like Batman, Shaggy, Bugs Bunny, and tons of other iconic franchises. The first launch actually did really well, huge play count, lot of buzz, but over time the content kinda slowed down, the update wasn't strong enough, then the things got worse and the game eventually shut down the original version back in 2023. But surprisingly, they had a comeback. They actually brought back the game in 2024 as a fully relaunch and completely rebuilt with new mechanics, improved netcode, and promised this is going to be the last time, and for a brief moment, people actually believed it. But the problem was it was basically the same cycle repeating again. The content wasn't coming fast enough, the progression felt very grindy, and the player base slowly started fading away. I honestly never really got to play MultiVersus because the original launch wasn't available in my region, and in the second time around I wasn't really interested, and by 2025 the support had started winding down and the game basically went into another shutdown situation. Moving on to an awesome free-to-play game that I have a special place in my heart, and that is Ironsight. This was a free-to-play first-person shooter that was a lot of people kind of sleep upon. It actually had a solid run for years after launch. It's a modern military-style first-person shooter with fast-paced arcade gunplay, UAVs, kill streaks, and pretty classic Call of Duty style feel, but completely free to play. It had a surprisingly good amount of customization with weapons, skins, attachments, and different loadouts, and honestly one of those games that had a pretty loyal community instead of massive hype. And people who played this game know how good and fun this game was, but obviously over time the player base slowly faded away, the updates become less impactful, more like seasonal patches, and it started feeling harder to keep the servers active at a healthy level. And eventually the support started winding down and the game was officially shut down in 2025. And this is the last time I played Ironsight, the last few gameplay footages that I captured for the channel. I played this game for years and a lot of you guys did the same, and it's really sad to see something like this going down. And if you get some awesome memories with this game, let me know down in the comment section. Super People 2 had one of the most confusing life cycle out of all of these games. So when it first launched, it actually had a very strong start. It was basically a battle royale, try to compete with the big guy on the market, which is PUBG. The gunplay, animation, the loadout system, the inventory, everything was super similar to PUBG. But on top of that, it got classes and different powers. The early access launch was a massive success. Tons of players jumped in, streams were everywhere, and for a moment it looked like this could be the next big thing in the battle royale space. But then the usual problems started kicking in. The player base kind of dropped off fast, matchmaking became very inconsistent, there's tons of balancing issues, made it harder to keep players engaged for a long term, and eventually they tried to rename the game as Super People 2, but the hype was completely died down and the game was shut down. But not too long ago, they actually relaunched the game back into the Steam, but unfortunately this time it barely made any impact. Right now it's sitting around single-digit play counts on Steam, so I don't really have big hopes for this one, but technically you can still download and play the game on Steam, but most likely you're going to play against bots. Alright, up next we got Dauntless, and this one is honestly kinda sad because it's one of the most successful free-to-play co-op games for a very long time. It was an awesome free-to-play monster hunting style of a game, and obviously inspired from the games like Monster Hunter, where you team up with your friends and take down massive behemoth, craft gear, and slowly getting stronger over time. When it first launched, it actually had a really solid player base, especially on Epic Games Store, and for a while it felt like it had real future as one of the main free-to-play co-op experiences. But over the years, things started slowing down, updates become less exciting and players instead kind of fade away. And with all these internal changes, they even attempt to refresh the game with new system and reworks. But for a lot of the original player base who played the game for the longest time, felt like some of these new changes made the game more grindy and made it a bit more pay to win. So there was some backlash, and ultimately the developers announced the shutdown of the game last year. It's another case that the game actually had a successful beginning and had a strong identity, and eventually just couldn't survive the long-term live service cycle. Warlander was a free-to-play shooter that I was super excited to check out, but it's a game that never really clicked with me ultimately. It was a free-to-play, massively multiplayer game that mixes medieval warfare with bit of fantasy and even some MOBA-style mechanics. You had huge battles with dozen players, siege warfare, catapults, magical abilities, even roles like tanks, priests, and mages all fighting together in a massive 50 versus 50 style matches. At launch, it honestly looked chaotic, but in a good way. A lot of players were cautious because there was nothing really like that at the time, but the problem was once you get past the initial chaos, the gameplay started feeling repetitive, balancing issues became more noticeable, and the matches could get pretty one-sided depending on the coordination. Over time, the player base started shrinking, but even with updates trying to fix things, the game never really broke into the mainstream audience. So just like that, it led into its shutdown, and it is one of those games that had a very creative concept, but ultimately just couldn't keep the players engaged in the long term. Next up is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodhunt. This one actually had a really strong identity when it first launched, and it was pretty successful as a battle royale title. It's a free-to-play battle royale set in the Vampire the Masquerade universe, but instead of usual guns and tactics style battle royale, this one focused on fast movement, vertical gameplay, parkour, rooftop, and unique vampire abilities. And the gameplay felt really fresh compared to any other battle royales on the market at the time. At launch, it got a lot of attention because how different it was, and for a while, it actually had some pretty decent player base on Steam, but obviously over time, the same issues started to show up again. The content updates slowed down, the player numbers dropped, and it actually became harder to keep the matchmaking healthy. So finally, the developers officially announced the game is shutting down in a couple of weeks' time, so you still got some time to say goodbye to this awesome free-to-play battle royale. And finally, we got one of the biggest surprises recently, and that is PUBG Blindspot. So this one is actually a brand new PUBG game that launched into Steam this year, and nobody really expected to flop this fast. It was a free-to-play top-down tactical shooter kinda inspired from games like Rainbow Six Siege, with small team-based matches, tight maps, and more strategy-focused style gameplay compared to the usual battle royale. At launch in early access, it actually got some attention because of the PUBG name, but the problem started almost immediately. The player count just never really took off. Even at its peak, it's only about few thousand players, and after that it started dropping fast, which made the matchmaking worse and worse. I don't know the exact reason why they shut down the game that soon, even before they're thinking about moving into a full launch. But keeping that aside, I had fun playing PUBG Blindspot. It may not be my favorite free-to-play shooter that I played in 2026, but it had a pretty solid gameplay, very comprehensive mechanics, and it's really sad to see a game going down like this without even trying. So I hope they will bring back this game with some improvements in the future. Well guys, this is the sad reality of a lot of the free-to-play games on the market right now. Even if they launch big, get hype, and have a cool idea behind it, it doesn't always last. Once the player base drop, updates slow down, the game can't really keep up. And if you got the chance to play any of these games back in the day, let me know down in the comment section what is your favorite games or favorite memories. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned for more free-to-play game coverage like this. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one.